Welcome, 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 everyone. I'm Chris Ferguson, your host of You've Championed Yourself. Who are you? Today, I have an amazing individual that I'm interviewing. His name is Tyson Sharpe. He is a go-to guy, kind of, in my mind, is the way I see it, because he's a connector. He's a networker. He's a connector in the spiritual. He's a connector on this planet. He has some amazing gifts that he has that I wish I had or knew about. So I'd like to welcome Tyson to the podcast.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
It's always been my dream to showcase people and their gifts and who've taken their dreams and their ideas and turned them into their realities. And as we both know, many people don't reach beyond their struggles and their pains. They don't reach beyond their traumas, and they give up. And so I honor you for not stopping, not quitting, not saying no, and listening. So that's why I asked you to be on my podcast, because I see you as one of those champions. But now we're going to get ready to find out who Tyson is and how he got to where he is now.
Beautiful. Yeah. So you're basically going from me being a champion to finding out why I'm not so much a champion and more just normal like everyone else.
Well, that's not even it. It's you're actually championing yourself by doing what you do. You may not celebrate it. You may not go out and have and toot your own horn, but you're doing so much in the community on the planet based. I mean, I'm on the serving page. That's how I met you. And for that gift, I've been on other pages. I'm in a mastermind. And I have gotten more out of your group than I have my mastermind. And that's speaking volumes.
And I think it comes down to, the reason why everyone sort of senses that and feels that is because that's always been my intent. You know, since I shifted and rebranded my community and my business, you know, to building a community like the Serving Circle, it's always been that focus. It's always been like, how do I just build something that's just super valuable that people aren't getting anywhere else, where they can feel the energy, they can connect with each other, they can get information around spirituality and business and marketing and personal development and all the things that I'm passionate about, and just do it in a way that's a bit unique, a bit different, but where people, they don't really get it anywhere else. And that's why I always encourage business owners who are building communities to do the same. Always be thinking like, what is creative, passionate, loving, resourceful ways in which I can add value, and that just allows everything to expand, I find. So I'm glad you're getting a lot of value in there, and it's kudos to you as well for moving in that space with a clear intent to serve, a clear intent to connect, and so no doubt you're getting value from it because of how you show up in there.
And I do. And I actually told my husband, I said, hey, if I miss some of these mastermind meetings from this point forward, know that I'm working on me in a way that's going to benefit me and my clients and the people in my life, instead of just going there. And this last week was an absolute mess. And so that just sealed it in my mind that wasn't the place for me to spend my time. Mm. And so I was a little, what's the word? Disappointed, I think. But they're not there to serve. They're not there to help. And that differentiated between going to the Serving Circle and paying to be in this master group and not getting your value worth was the leveraging factor.
Mm. I guess that's good feedback for me. I know this is your podcast interviewing me, but I'd love to. I always love understanding a bit more about when people are getting into masterminds, when people are getting into programs, and if it isn't aligned, why that is. So would you say that that's because it was more of a formal way of doing business, or what do you think is different about the Serving Circle, or how you like to show up in communities that's different from that particular mastermind?
For me, it is, I guess my shortcomings has always been marketing, because I've never been able to market myself. I don't have that as one of my tools. And so learning about marketing, one, has been really good. However, it's the way it's presented. If you present anything to me harsh, or if you present anything where you're speaking to anybody negatively, I back out. I'm not about that. I've seen so much in law enforcement over 40 years how people treat people. And that's why I created this podcast for the people who don't speak their voice or who don't speak up, and celebrate themselves for all the things that they do in the world that's notable, that's for humanity, for mankind, to help people get that step up. And that was the reason why I created the podcast. And with that, it's like everything else. In law enforcement, I couldn't have an opinion. I couldn't use my gifts. I was a hostage negotiator and I was a criminal profiler. Those were my two skills, major skills. And so you don't do the woo-woo. You don't do the I know without knowing. It's all about the facts. So there was a huge duality in my life. And so as of May of this year, I retired. So it's like, bar the door, Katie. Here I am, and I'm speaking up, I'm speaking out, and I'm sharing everything that I have. And I'm just grateful, like I said to you before we got started, that so many younger people are engaging in this, and they're inviting it in and taking it and running with it. And if I can help champion them to get their voices out, that's what I'm all about. That's how I give back my service to everyone.
That's beautiful. And I think I got on Friday, I think it was 3 calls, and on all 3, they shared that similar message. They got on a call with me, and they shared how they were pretty surprised and blown away by my age, and by not only by the age, but the wisdom that they're learning from me, and the insight and depth in which I'm teaching, in which I'm sharing. And it's it's definitely interesting how a lot of people are sort of, sometimes we just grow up with different patterns. And so sometimes I find when people are younger and they're birthed into an environment which might have a heightened level of consciousness, and whether they, as I've been branded as an old soul, but I think it might be that may be just a part of where we're at, is just that more and more souls are coming into this world with, a depth of knowledge and a heightened level of consciousness, and a more conscious environment which they find themselves in, and I think when that's the case, it doesn't necessarily come down to age. It just comes through, what sort of truth is flowing through you. And if you don't have necessarily too many patterns that are restricting that, then I just think the wisdom that flows through me is the same wisdom that flows through anyone. There's nothing flowing through me that won't flow through someone else that sits in silence, for a few hours or whatever. And so I think just being able to embrace that doesn't come down to age. It's just a matter of how much you're willing to live from truth.
And that's key, because back in my age, when I was growing up back in the 60s, kids weren't seen or heard. Mm-hmm. And you had your place. And so it was all about the programming and the dogma and the strict religious backgrounds. Divorce was not acceptable. We didn't have a lot of the freedoms, but there was a lot of atrocities that happened too. I think partially what's happening with, I call them kids nowadays. I'm in my 60s. So I call everybody younger than 40 kids. And my daughter laughs at me. She goes, Mom, they're very experienced individuals and you might be insulting them. And I always say it's just because I see you as such youthful lives and youthful beings that you're so mature beyond your years because you were allowed to be. Where other people weren't allowed to be that. So their transition is taking longer compared to before, because they have to get rid of all the stuff they were programmed with, all the understandings, all the knowledge, all the absolutes, and then go back to zero and then start again. And that all takes a while. So I think you were luckily enough, because of progression over time, humanity saying, no, this isn't right. We're getting closer to that Aquarian age versus this Piscean age, where it's just absolute control, money, greed, politics, where now it's all about the environment. It's all about humanity. It's all about becoming conscious of each other and ourselves. And that took a lot of years to get through because society has fought it every step of the way. Because I remember when transcendental meditation came out in the 70s, and they were like, oh, that's woo-woo stuff, and it'll just jack you up, and it's just promoting drug usage. And there was no drugs involved. It was all about meditation, a new understanding of meditation. And so, of course, society just labeled it, tried to cancel it, tried to do it, but it never went away. And so I think this is how, luckily for you, you didn't have to unlearn all this stuff to learn it from the beginning. And that makes you what I consider a purer soul, because you don't have all the baggage to have to get rid of and figure out why you've got to get rid of it and get beyond it and step out, compared to going through all the mess and the junk and the gunk and then finally finding, oh, here's the light. So I think that's how I'm feeling it, that it goes. But what I'd like to talk to you is one of the topics is how to follow your heart's calling. When you said that, what were you talking about?
Yeah, I just think I think when we're making decisions in life, when we ask ourselves these questions, okay, well, what do I want to do on this, in this lifetime? What is it that I feel called to contribute? Who do I feel called to become? I just think there are certain beliefs and certain patterns. And one of the beliefs that I've really started to question and shift in the last few years, especially as I come into full-time entrepreneurship for the last couple of years, is around the belief that we're meant to do what we don't want to do so that we can make the money to do what we want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And even now and then, like, the pattern still comes up within me when I think, oh, I need to struggle for this, or I need to work hard and put in this certain amount of effort so that I deserve this sort of result. And I just think that paradigm is starting to shift, where when I ask myself the question, what if I made money doing what I love and enjoying the whole thing? And there was actually some fear that came up in that. There was actually some fear that came up that was like, no, it can't be like that. And if it was like that, then I'd feel guilty. Or, and just looking at these patterns that say, that scream out, go with your head and not your heart, and go with the expectations and cultural norms and what society expects, rather than what your heart is calling you towards. And so when I say that, I just think there's always something that our heart or our spirit is guiding us towards in this life that feels exciting, that also feels scary to your mind. And following that path is very uncertain to your patterns, uncertain to your mind, but it's also very, very exciting and fulfilling to your heart. And so for me to help people on that journey is one where I feel very, very blessed to do so. And it's something that I think people just need to ask themselves those deeper questions of, like, what am I here for? What is it that would excite me the most? Who do I feel called to become? And what sort of patterns do I need to release in order to achieve that?
See, I really love that. I was lucky enough that my childhood became my passion. It was helping kids who had no structure, who had no support system, who were punting in life and making a lot of bad decisions. So 21 years of my 40 years of law enforcement, I worked with gang members on the streets. I helped create I was one of 3 individuals that was the grassroots that came up with the fact that truancy in South Florida wasn't illegal. And we had 22,000 kids every year going truant. Parents didn't know where they were. They're at work. Schools are, calling home and the kids are answering the phone. Oh yeah, he's homesick, So it was about changing the law to hold people accountable, especially the kids, instead of pulling the wool over their parents' eyes and not going to school. Because as a kid that was in an orphanage, I learned at 8 years old that my education was the way out for me. That was the way to change my life and not become a product of my society, because everybody in that day was a juvenile delinquent. No matter what you did or didn't do, if you didn't follow society norms, you were a juvenile delinquent. So you were automatically labeled. So working with gang members, and my philosophy always has been, if I could reach one individual, it was worth my time. And then I went to an alternative high school, and there was 3,000 kids. It was 78% Black, and probably 1/4 of the population of the school were ankle monitors, because this was a school that was all the overflow of other areas of boundaries, or if kids in the south part of the county got in trouble on a school board, like bringing drugs to school or whatever, they would ship into our school and we would have to deal with them there. So in seeing this, it was my way of giving back and showing these kids, nobody knew I was an orphan. Nobody knew I had all those abandonment issues before. Nobody knew didn't know what love was at the time when I was growing up. So I was the Fergie that kicked people's ass. I was the Fergie that broke up gang fights. It didn't matter if you were boys or girls, how big you were, how tall you were. It didn't matter. It was all about keeping kids safe. So lucky enough, I got cat hair in my mouth. No. Lucky enough, I did a job that I loved and I got paid well for doing it. So that was my gift to I guess the universe to me was like, you don't have to worry, even though you didn't have anything in your life. You didn't understand money, but you didn't understand money. So you used money when you got it and you were grateful for whatever you had. So I didn't have that lack in my life. And so that's why now that I'm retired, I'm still giving back in everything I do. The kids that I used to work with up here in the schools are still hooking up with me once they graduate. So it's always about serving and being of service. So I love that. I love that from the heart. And when you said that, I could really resonate with it. But I've been fortunate in my life where a lot of people, I'm one of 11 children, and I'm only 2 that's a college graduate out of 11. So it's all about choices. But I didn't listen to my friends who didn't know any more than I knew in middle school and high school, because they all wanted to act like they were authorities on different things, and they didn't know anything as much as I knew. You know, they were just talking about things they'd watched on TV or some kind of movie they've been able to get a hold of. Or come here, he's got to get down. You got to get down, buddy. It was just one of those things. So when you talk about managing your fear, how do you do that?
Well, it's first an understanding that, the overall understanding that fear doesn't mean something's going wrong. Mm-hmm. Fear doesn't mean that it needs to be fixed or it needs to be changed or whatever. Mm. And that's what people think. They think, oh, because I have fear around this, I need to change it. I need to shift it. I need to move in the other direction. I need to avoid it. And it's only when I feel excited about it and not scared that I'll take that leap. And I have a very different approach. And I found this when I started meditating consistently and pretty heavily in silence. And to those who don't know, I about 3 years ago started meditating about 2 hours a day, just sitting in silence and seeing what comes up. And it really came from this period of my life when my business was sort of crumbling. My business was doing well, and then it wasn't. And it was at that point where where income dried up, clients dried up. I actually had to give refunds to some current clients through crazy, crazy circumstances. And I was just like, man, what's life teaching me here? And it was through that experience where I realized I was building my business from fear. I needed to make money to feel safe. I needed to feel successful and be perceived as successful to feel enough and loved. And I know how common those patterns are, but I realized I was building my business from those patterns, and many of my clients and many of my community members were as well. And I noticed that. And so instead of building my business from that place, I just decided to sit with the side of me that was scared. And so I sat in silence and felt the fear. So the fear was there, the fear of going broke, or, the fear of failing and all those different things. And so I sat with the side of me that was scared. I felt the fear fully, and I felt it without resistance and judgment. And a lot of the times that comes up for me in my stomach and in my chest, and I just allowed it to be there, and I welcomed it, and I held a loving, safe space for it. And to my surprise, as I'm a big advocate for it now, it started to leave. It started to dissipate as I just held a loving, safe space for it and welcomed it. And so I realized all the emotions were coming up because they were coming out. They were coming up because they were leaving. And so I ended up sitting in this chair for about 6 hours that day, just sitting in silence. I did take some breaks. It wasn't 6 hours straight, but it was 3 lots of 2 hours. And I just sat in this chair. I'm like, what am I here to see? What is coming up that's ready to emerge, that's ready to be seen? And as things just came up, they started leaving. They started to transcend. And with that came some insights. With that came some deep wisdom. And that's when I got the guidance that said, hey, if you build a community and you fall in love with serving and the art of serving, then everything else take care of itself. The clients, the income, the collaborations, the opportunities, every single thing that everything that you need will be given to you in perfect timing. Even if it's not what your mind thinks you need at that time, and it goes against what your mind thinks, you can just trust that no matter what happens, it's all going to be for you as long as you fall in love with serving. And that's really where I rebranded my current group, and I called it the Serving Circle. And that's where that was born and where the energy of it started to be created. But it really gives you an understanding around what fear is. And I now know that fear can come up, especially when you're following your heart. All the patterns that are meant to come up to be seen and to heal, all the sides of you that need to be seen because they're ready to leave and they're no longer serving you, are coming up because they're ready to be healed. They're ready to leave. They're ready to transcend. And it's actually not up to you to change it or shift it or move it. It's just up to you to just sit there and to just embrace it and love it. And the more you do that, the more you surrender, the more it will do what it needs to. And the guidance that flows through is the byproduct of just doing that process.
See, I love that. I don't fear much. I don't fear much at all, anything at all. And with having 3 near-death experience and meeting my creator in 3 different times in my life, it teaches you not to fear. I wonder if people are interpreting fear because of the uncertainty of what could be and what might be. Because of that, they overthink it, they worry about it, they second guess themselves, they doubt themselves. And this is what your subconscious builds up on when you think about it. It's like, oh, you can't do that, don't try it. So it takes your confidence away. It takes your understanding and your compassion, and people become sympathetic instead of empathic or empathetic with people. And then there's 2 different things in, and it just becomes a snowball. So I love the fact that when you spoke of this, you spoke of it in the way that I teach it, and you didn't know this, is because fear is nothing. It's the uncertainty that we feel uncomfortable with. It gets us out of our comfort zone, and most human beings don't like change. So I love the way that you said that, and I just had to share that with you because it's like, that's what I felt when I came to the Serving Circle, was that you were helping people get beyond their uncertainties. Because in my life, I can do anything. When I moved to Tennessee, I wanted to get post-certified in Tennessee. So I had to go back to the police academy. I happened to be 60 years old at the time. I went through 12 weeks. I was the oldest person in the class. I did everything they did. I wasn't as fast as some, but I was fast about more than a lot of them. And they were 19, 20, and 21-year-olds. So when you come from that mindset of I can do anything, it kind of helps you. I mean, I've been, like I said, with everything in my life, I've been blessed in several key ways to keep me out of trouble or keep me from second guessing myself. There's times things don't work, but it's not that I failed. I just didn't complete it the right way or tweak it now and to see if that works better. So I love the fact that you said it, sitting in fear is an awesome way of doing it, but it's also identifying, is it because you're uncertain? You're uncertain of the future? You're holding on to the uncertainty of the past? And so when you said it the way you did it, I was just like, yes, this is why I asked you to be here, because you're understanding at your age and being a male, and I'm not labeling anybody here. I'm just being very specific because a lot of men are not in touch with their divine feminine or their divine masculine. It's very rare. And so you're a diamond in the rough. And it's not even the rough. You're just a diamond that's exploding to the planet at a time that it's needed. And I thank you for that, for stepping out and being vulnerable enough to be able to speak on it, because a lot of people don't like to admit their shortcomings or don't like to admit they don't know. And this is what's so new and refreshing. And again, I'm honored and excited you're here today.
Thank you. I appreciate your kind words. And I think it just gives me some indication on, I just really have the mission to just share openly and honestly what the hell's going on with me. And that's why I love sharing when it comes to my insecurities and vulnerabilities and everything like that. Actually, to even just to give you a feel of, the intention of what I do to create the serving circle. Obviously, that there's the collaborative calls we do each week, and they're growing in popularity, and people are loving it and getting a lot of benefit from just meeting everyone on there. The reason why I started the collaborative calls is because once my community started really finding a lot of momentum, finding a lot of traction, I found a pattern come up within me that was around competition and was around insecurities and things where I'm like, oh my God, if someone is more successful than me, then that makes me less than. And I noticed this pattern within me. So obviously through sitting with it, through being in a space of openness with myself and feeling it fully and holding that loving safe space for the 5-year-old in me who was insecure around kids who could do things that were better than me and everything like that. I started to heal those patterns. And so actually the reason why the collaborative calls came about as an idea is because I'm like, you know what? I feel insecure and I feel competition when someone comes into the group and they're promoting themselves. I'm like, what if I just did a segment each hour where everyone else promoted themselves except me, and just see what comes up within me, right? And obviously it was a way to serve, but it was also a way to heal my patterns of seeing what comes up within me when everyone else is promoting themselves and they're forming collaborations and everything within themselves. And I'm just the one holding the space for them to do that. And so there's a lot of healing in that. There's a lot of patterns that come up, but that's just towards me so that I can show up in a way that is, that's more truthful, that's more from a place of divine love and more from a place of service. And so that's really what I decided to do. And that's really where I come from now. It's like, what is there to be healed within myself? Let's share that. And then let's make decisions and actions based on who and what I really am and not from the pattern.
Right. I agree with that wholeheartedly. There's so many people I'm inviting to your circle, but I'm being hesitant about who I invite because I don't want to spoil the waters. Does that make sense? Because when something feels so good and so warming and so loving, when you come in and nobody knows you from Adam. I mean, how I heard about you and they recommended you. So I was like, okay, yeah, go check it out. And I'm a fast, staunch believer of it, but I've always been of service. And I think that's the difference, because it is helping people heal their wounds. And that's exactly how it should be in my world. No matter what job you do, no matter if you're a doctor, lawyer, Indian chief, it doesn't matter. You should be helping people heal their wounds and dealing with it the best way you can within the scope of your job. And so I'm just kind of curious, how do you help people heal their wounds?
Yeah, well, that's what I love doing. I love using the business journey as a tool to grow spiritually. Another way of saying that is to heal your wounds, your traumas, your patterns that are no longer serving you. So that's what I love doing. I have people in my programs who are spiritual entrepreneurs, and so they might be intuitives or healers or mindset coaches or whoever has an element of spirituality within their teachings. And that's exactly what we do. We go through, I help them with their business. So similar to how I've grown online and how I do my marketing, how I do my content, how I build my community, I help them with all of that, especially around their communication and messaging. When it comes down to the application of it, we have this undercurrent where it says, here's your, let's say, a marketing plan. Here's what to do when you're delivering a message. Here's how to create this launch, right? And how to do it in a successful way. But what comes up on that journey is what we focus on. What comes up in terms of the, like you said, the uncertainties, the insecurities, the wounds and the patterns along the way around judgments, around fears, around attachments to certain outcomes and results, around resistance to life, thinking it needs to be different. This is what I call the fear jar. The fear jar is the acronym and the analogy of being stuck in the fear jar. And the acronym is, what are your fears? Where are your judgments? What are you attached to? And what are you in resistance to in life? And by recognizing them and healing them while you're going on the business journey, you get to become the version of you who's capable of achieving that outcome, right? And so that's really what we focus on. That's really what I love doing with helping people. And just the way they see business, the way they see their life, and the way they operate in it just completely transforms. It's crazy what happens with my clients when they're the vast majority. Well, I shouldn't say the vast majority. Probably about 40 to 50% of all of my clients, when they start working with me, end up moving in some regard, moving location, whether it's internationally, whether it's interstate. They just, for some reason, because they're heightening their consciousness, they're healing, they're becoming more and more truthful within themselves. Energetically, they just find more alignment somewhere else physically. And I'm just blown away. And it's just bizarre how many people just feel called to move, called to travel, called to completely change their relationships, whether they're getting married or getting divorces. Like, it is, when you follow your heart, this is what it guides you towards. So I just really sit back and enjoy the ride of what my clients are doing, not only with their business, but in their life. And it's cool to see.
I have seen a lot of that too with my clients. It's because they're allowing themselves to become their best version of themselves without fear, without uncertainty, with boundaries, with a different mindset, because they're not afraid that the floor is cracking underneath them. And I love that. I absolutely love that. Where do you see the serving circle going to in the future? Have you sat down and thought of that at all?
I never really think about it too much in the future. Let's say 5-10 years. I do have current ideas and projects of each next step, but where it's moving in terms of a long-term vision, I'm really not too sure. I really don't spend a lot of time thinking about that. And I probably could, but where my main focus is on the group right now, the community right now. It's obviously growing organically, but how just different ways of serving, different ways of collaborating, allowing people to, come together in more effortless ways. That's why I created the welcome pack. So the welcome pack has access to the Spirit in Business course. It's got the directory, and it's also got all the links necessary to jump on the collaborative calls and stuff like that. So that gives people really easy access to just get all the links necessary. But I'm thinking, moving forward about always, building a team, building people who would like to partner with the Serving Circle, doing different things that we can add value where it's a really good exchange, and being more of a leader with growing a team and having help there. So I do have people I do have people in mind. I do have people who are coming on board. So someone like Trish Bishop, she's done a lot of work for me with getting the directory on board and brainstorming ideas for me and helping with some of the logistical stuff. So she's been a really, really key part of the Serving Circle, and she forever will be. So just getting more help and definitely opening up for more ideas of what people think would be a great idea to add value in the community and build it in the way we have. But I think what you highlighted before is really my main focus is on keeping the integrity and keeping the energy what it's meant to be in terms of that heartfelt unity consciousness. That's really my main focus. So it's not necessarily on the growth of the group. It's not necessarily on where it goes, but it's more of that energy that we need most. So that's really where my mind goes and where my focus is.
And I agree. Being in law enforcement, not everybody in law enforcement has the integrity they should have, like in any profession, but it's something that speaks to my heart. It's that integrity I hold myself to. It's that worth, that value, because if I don't have it for myself, how am I going to have it for anybody else? It'd be just a job. And so with that, I carry that in every part of my life. What made you, I'm trying to see how I can phrase this. When you started the serving circle, did you expect it to be this positive in this short amount of time?
No, I didn't. I've always had a group, and it's never really been anything that's grown outside of me. Now I feel like it's growing outside of me, which is now why I'm so willing to not only have help and not only build it so that there's more of a team structure in place, but because I know it's bigger than me. It's more than me, and I see it not necessarily as my community, but our community, and that's really where my heart is and where my mind goes. Because when people are exploring and they're getting so much value because they're interacting with each other, they're building relationships, they're doing service exchanges and getting on each other's podcasts and organizing these collaborations, that's the energy within the group, and that goes beyond me. I may be the host, I may hold the container, but really the energy and the magic is the members that are in it and the members that are engaging in it. So being able to create ways in which people can do that, and create ways in which divine love and divine resourcefulness can flow through them, that's really my intent. But no, I didn't necessarily know it was going to evolve in this way or be this engaging. Like in the last 30 days, whatever, it's grown by, I've had 300 new members, and I'm just sitting back like, okay, that's a lot of personal messages to reach out to everyone, but I'm willing to do it, and I definitely want to see the divine in each person that's in the community. But just me being creative and resourceful with how I can add value is that's my main focus.
But I think just by you being you is that attraction, Tyson. I think you being you, by being so welcoming and so open and so vulnerable, again, I think this is the attraction, because so many people haven't had that in their lives. They haven't had that in business. Again, it's like you said, it's that competitiveness. And what most people don't realize is that there could be 100,000 entrepreneurs out there, or 1 million. But there's plenty on this planet, and there's a plenty energy to be able to bring to you what is yours and you to be successful. And I feel that that in your heart now, where that was an issue before, but that's what you're exuding out to other people. And I don't think you realize that. And so in that's when you put that out, that frequency, because I always tell people your frequency speaks before you ever say a word. Your frequency is engaging. If it's love and it's light, if it's of light language, if it's of kindness, if it's of empathy, it's always going to speak that positive before you ever say a word. And people are going to it's going to shape who you are, your aura field. And you're going to be the brightest light in the forest. And that's what people are attracted to, because that's everything I felt when I joined. And I thought, this is amazing. There is no competition here. I don't have to prove who I am or try to get people to understand. I've never advertised my groups. I've never posted, Black Friday this, Black Friday that. I don't ever do that. And I started out part-time, and nobody knew in my law enforcement job knew that I was doing it. So that was my intention. And so it was building the foundation. It was stepping out on a part-time basis. I was good with that. And then as it got closer and closer, and finally I just was like, you know what? I really don't care what anybody thinks. I'm done. May 28th. Let's just pull the Band-Aid off of this and expose it for what it is and just be. And that's what I did. So when people learn to do that, and I think that's one of your gifts, you talk about healing people through their wounds and growing communities, but you also allow them to be themselves, to grow and to learn the love they might not have known. And that is a unique gift. I don't think you're even aware of how big it is.
Yeah, and for you,
I thank you for that, because a lot of people can't do that, because it's all about the dollar. It's all about getting this instead of expanding the message and showing the love and light, and let that speak louder.
Yeah, it's definitely true. I find when we have when we place a higher priority on our spiritual journey, I think the scary part is making your decisions and actions from the truths that you know, because it's it can, a lot of people speak a lot about love and light, and they speak that compassion and you know, and heartfelt living is what's important. But then their decisions and actions don't reflect that. Their decisions and actions are still from the patterns of scarcity or uncertainty, and they want to, you know, they have that competition or the need for significance. And there's nothing wrong with that, because all the patterns are there to help us evolve, and they're all neutral. Everything in the world is neutral. But when you do know a truth and you still make decisions based on the prior pattern that you know is not divine truth, that's when there's the internal conflict. So my real focus has always been, okay, once a real truth comes through, like we're all one, what's in the one is in the whole, I need to the best of my conscious ability, make my decisions from that place. And as the fear comes up, I realize that it's the patterns that are no longer serving me, like the inner 5-year-old who believes that you need to stand out to be loved. Mm-hmm. That's the 5-year-old that's freaking out when I make the decision from love, when I make the decision from my heart. So if I make a decision from the pattern, I reinforce that pattern is who and what I am. But the more I make decisions based on divine love, that, hey, we're all one, and what's one is in the whole, what's in the one is in the whole, then I can hold space for that 5-year-old who believes that we're all separate and that we need to stand out to be loved. And so as the more I hold space for that pattern, it will die, and it will feel very uncomfortable in my body. Like I said, I'll feel this uncertainty and heaviness, and maybe I might feel a heat in my stomach. Mm-hmm. I just allow it to be there. I allow it to be there. I welcome it in, hold a loving, safe space for it. And it's literally the way I sort of describe it is the fear is what's not you leaving. Mm-hmm. So it's, you know, who and what I am is what I do, or who and what I am is the opinions of other people, or money's my safety, right? All these core beliefs that the ego sticks to, that's what's leaving when you do this inner work, and when you sit in silence, and when you meditate, and when you do this feel to heal type of process. And so the more we make our decisions based on the truths that we know to be true, the divine truths, I think that's really what people are feeling. And I appreciate your kind words as well. And it just gives me some feedback around what I do in my community, and how I am able to, you know, how I'm able to share that energy. So I appreciate your feedback and the kind words, and it's just a reminder to everyone else. The more you make those decisions from what you know to be true and from your heart, it may be scary, but trust me, there's some results and there's some outcomes on the other side that go so much more than what you can achieve.
It's called awesomeness at that point.
Yeah. Follow the awesomeness.
Yes. Well, the thing was, again, one of my experiences, I was 20 years old, and my older brother, who was 3 years older than me, was killed by a drunk driver. And I was this volatile kid, and I had all this built up anger and all this aggression inside of me because of my past. And the one thing I knew is I never wanted to know this man's name. I never wanted to know who he was, because I, at that point in my life, would have avenged my brother's death. And then it get to a part I was like, why am I holding all of this anger on myself for somebody I don't know? And it was the process I had to learn to go through. And it came to the point, and through my spiritualness, I found the love inside of me from my creator, with working through my shadow work, to forgive this man who killed my brother. And at that point, I had learned unconditional love. It's not that I was accepting his bad behavior for what happened. It just wasn't for me to carry his burdens in his lives for his actions that he did. And that's exactly what I was doing. And so when I released that and started to see everything from unconditional love, my life changed. I was able to be that support system. I was able to be disassociated from my emotions and be able to be a teacher for those that didn't know the difference. And so I think when people see their uncertainty, like you were talking about, and working through their fears, it's about getting to the point where it's not an emotional baggage. When you realize, and when you think about it, up to 18 years of age, most everything that happened to you was beyond your control. Legally, mentally, emotionally, physically. It was that you had parents and you were bound by the laws of the country you lived in. It wasn't until everybody turns 18 that all of a sudden they're like thrown to the wolves and said, here, you're 18, you're an adult, go be you. Well, they forget your brain doesn't stop growing until you're 24. Your frontal lobe is still creating and connecting, and the neurons are still making new connections, and it doesn't stop making new connections until you're 24. So do we penalize the young for it? Well, no, but we have to have compassion and understanding that people are going to do bad things, but that doesn't make them a bad person. And I think if more people see that, and this is why, again, I wanted you on my podcast, is because you and I think a lot alike, even though we have years apart, but it took two different dynamic situations, one in your way and one in my way, for us to come together on the same level. But I see you bringing everybody else up to your level, and that's what I call unconditional love. And I don't think you realize that either.
There are many things I don't realize. I talk to people all day, and they're like, "Did you realize that when you do this, that this comes across?" I'm like, "Nah, no clue, no clue." Or they like it even really. The one thing that surprised me the most was how much people can feel your energy even on Zoom. When I'm doing collaborative calls and I'm hosting those, or I'm on podcasts, or I'm coaching my clients and we're doing group coaching calls and things like that, where people can feel your energy. And so I obviously work a lot at going within, sitting in silence, embracing whatever's willing to be seen. And I just ask the universe, I said, whatever's ready to be seen, even if my mind doesn't want to see it, let's bring it up and let's hold space for it. And just the amount of the healing that's come from that, and the energy that I'm now able to share. I didn't know how easily that was felt, or how, and maybe it is because I have developed this community of, majority are empaths, and they do pick up on energy quite a lot. Maybe that is a factor, but yeah, just the heavy, feedback, just the consistent message that I get of people can actually feel that I care, and they can feel where I'm coming from, and they can feel my heart. That was the most surprising to me. And now, like I said, the more I talk to people, the more I'm realizing more and more what I've missed. But I'm just like, hey, my focus is on doing my best to heal, doing my best to become who I'm wanting to become, and then make my decisions and actions from that place. And everything else is a byproduct of what may come about from that. So it's it's quite a journey where I'm excited to see what unfolds, and happy to receive feedback along the way and continue to learn.
Well, I love to showcase people, but these were the things that came up in me that I saw in you that you were putting out. So I didn't know if you knew that. And if you think of frequencies as quantum physics, everything is in flow. Everything is liquid. It's just our perception about what around us is happening. And if you think of it as the placebo effect, how we can influence ourselves. Because if I give you a pill, you don't know it's sugar, and I said, Tyson, this is going to cure you. It's going to make you better. You're going to take it in. You're going to believe that in your mind, in your heart, in your soul. And it was just sugar. It was a sugar pill. But because you believed in yourself so much is how it heals. And part of that is the method that you use to deliver it. So I'm not saying you're the placebo effect, but you're one of those placebo effects in many people's lives, because you give them that space to see the best in them. And again, that's a rarity. That's uncommon. That's not normal. And so that's the attraction. And it's all about love and light, but it's all about quantum physics. So science actually supports what you're doing, and you didn't even know that.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Learn something every day, don't you?
So, but yeah, so it is. I'm just really happy and to talk to somebody who's on in the same aura as I am, as far as business, being an entrepreneur, being spiritual, and holding space for other people and being of service. And of that, I want to say thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me.
And all the things that you do. And hang on just 1 second, okay?
Sure thing.
It takes a special kind of individual to dream their dreams, their thoughts and ideas, and turn them into reality. Tyson has done that. He stepped past his fears, he stayed his course, and had the courage to follow through to the end. Tyson Sharpe, you've championed yourself. Now we know who you've become. Thank you for sharing your ideas, your thoughts, and your dreams with us today.